This is the plaintiff, Stephen Blackman. He says he brought his Harley-Davidson motorcycle to the defendant's shop for repairs, and the guy has no idea what he's doing. He had to bring it back a few times for the same electrical reason, and was charged more and more each time. The defendant should have fixed the problem the first time. He was ripped off, and is suing for the $5,000 he's now owed. This is the defendant, John Mooney. He says he's been in business for 20 years, and it seems as though the plaintiff's trying to work the system on him. He fixed everything the plaintiff authorized him to fix. He has an older bike which has multiple issues, and the guy's just sore he has to put all his money into his bike to get it to work right. Oh, and $5,000? Please. He's accused of bilking a biker.
All parties, please use your right hand.
Welcome back to the People's Court. Next case on the docket, the plaintiff brought his Harley to the defendant's shop for repair, and the guy never got it right. But the defendant says he fixed it fine. It's the case of Chopper. He hardly knew her.
Thank you, Douglas. Okay, Mr. Blackman, you are a Harley rider, huh?
Sometimes.
For how many years?
Oh, well, 25 plus, easy.
Okay, you took your Harley to be repaired by Suffolk County Harley, represented here by, you're the general manager, John Mooney?
That's correct.
And you're suing them for $5,000 because according to you, they messed it up.
That's correct.
Talk to me.
Okay, well, I first went in there with an electrical problem, and 10,
How
12,
old's your bike? 10 years old?
2009 is 10 years, yeah.
Okay.
I have pictures of it if you'd like to see them. But
Sure would.
it's in perfect condition, bought a very low mileage, and I recently had the motor and the transmission rebuilt a year prior to going there from another company in Long Island.
Okay.
So anyway, I brought it in for electrical problem, and it went in, and they supposedly fixed it, charged me $400 and change. Took the bike home, and I had the same thing reoccur.
How much later?
Second day. I just drove it home.
What day did you get the first repair done?
Oh, the date was on 10, the appointment was for 10/8, and they gave it back to me on 10/12, 4 days later.
Okay, and then the second time when you brought it in a second time was when?
Oh, when I brought it, I called them back to make another appointment, and I said, you didn't fix it, and they said, well, you got to wait 7 weeks or 6 weeks to bring it back. I go,
Okay, now according to you, he had a repair that he did, an electrical repair, that got done in October, and he brought it in November with a separate electrical issue, is that correct?
Correct.
How were they separate? According to him, you got to wait you're like a cardiologist. You got to wait 7 weeks for an appointment. Are you guys that busy?
I can't really speak for that. I highly doubt that if a person left our shop and 2 days later had an issue that anybody would say you have to wait 7 weeks to get back.
Right. Do you have any evidence that you called 2 days later?
I got all the evidence right here.
No, don't just start handing me things. Listen to my question. Do you have any evidence that you called 2 days later?
I have a voicemail, like he left a message on it.
They called you back?
Yeah.
Okay, let me hear that.
I got to turn my phone on.
Yeah, you take care of that while I'm talking to you. What did he bring it in October for versus what did he bring it in November for?
Without getting overly complicated.
Yeah, don't.
The first time that he came in, he had an inoperative radio speedometer and a neutral indicator light.
What happened to you?
It's not going on. Trying to get it on, it's not going on.
Yeah, it'll go on. It'll go on when you leave here. Make it go on while we're in here.
I'm trying.
Go ahead.
When we diagnosed the bike, as Mr. Bleckman just stated, he had an aftermarket shop do some work to his bike performance-wise, which is non-factory and non-street legal. We were unable to do an electrical diagnostic with that component on, which is in the evidence binder. I gave you an example of it.
Yes, I saw the evidence binder. It has colored binders. Gotta love that. Okay. I'm not making fun of you. I do love that. I meant that. Okay, go ahead.
We informed him we needed to remove that from the vehicle and replace his factory ECM, which is the brain of the bike, to diagnose it. Once we did that and replaced the pollution system pieces that he removed, everything was working correctly.
So you know then that it's the aftermarket stuff?
Right.
Okay.
After he left, the next point of contact that I show, or the contract dates, would have been in late November. The issue this time around, when we pulled out the piece that reads the speedometer and the radio volume and the neutral indicator light, they're inside the transmission case, which is also laid out in there. They were contaminated with metal, which caused them to malfunction. Now, contaminants you'll see a little bit of here and there. These were cleaned up, the parts were replaced, We test rode the vehicle. All of the symptoms that he had come in with were then working correctly. However,
How are the metal shavings getting in there?
well, it looks like his heel was resting on the heel shifter, which is applying pressure to the shift fork and just wearing out against the gear. There's also some photos of where his heel shifter on the vehicle was set up. Was noted by the technician that worked on it that it was so low to the floorboard that you could easily touch it with your heel. A lot of guys will do that to prevent having to lift up high to heel shift it. So if you go too low, you may not even notice that your foot is resting on it. Now the distance between the two pegs is only about 10 3/4 inch. I myself have a size 13. You have a pretty big foot. It can easily happen where you're leaning on it, which wouldn't be that big a deal, but the position it was in was causing it to now push that shifter fork into the gear and grind down.
Wow. Okay. So what was the solution? A new transmission?
An overhaul of the transmission because the metal contaminants wore out things, bearings, things that can't be reused.
So you give him a quote for that, and what was the quote?
1,600 and change.
All right. And then at some point, you don't want them to do the work.
That's correct.
Why?
So how many times do you have to bring your vehicle back to a repair shop if they don't fix it right before you can go to a second one and then charge the first one for the cost of the second?
I'd say one time.
One time?
Yeah, if they don't do it right the first time.
You don't give them a chance to fix the problem that they didn't necessarily fix the first time?
It's beyond that, because let's say the car has a problem and somebody gets hurt because they didn't fix it the first time correctly.
That's fair enough, but you don't know that until it doesn't work. Do you have to at least give them one opportunity?
I mean, yeah, give them an opportunity, but if the first time, if they don't do it right, then don't go back to them.
Fair enough. Going inside the courtroom.
The original electrical problem was never fixed. I brought it back a second time. I had to wait 7 weeks for them to look at the bike.
Did you ever find evidence that 2 days later it wasn't working, like you said you'd find?
It's not going on. It's
Okay.
dead.
So now so you basically just felt like they didn't know what they were doing or something, or?
Well, I wanted to bring the bike back for them to rectify the problem still. And I brought it back 7 weeks later, and they had the same issue, and they charged me another amount of money for it.
How much was the second bill?
Another $400 approximately.
Okay.
And then they continued to tell
How much
me.
was the second bill?
On your second work order was $880. The
Okay.
diagnostic
So it's
for
accurate
this
that he paid you $1,249, right?
Yes.
All right, so now you end up paying to ship the bike and getting it fixed in Tampa, and you got it fixed in Tampa for how much? 13?
Total bill, yeah, $1,480 was the total bill. The receipts.
Okay,
It is.
so why are you suing for $3,880 from them?
Well, because of the fact that they blew my transmission.
What
And I had-
evidence do you have of that?
Because when I drove it there, everything worked perfect. Everything. And if it wasn't, it would have been fixed. So it didn't run right.
If it wasn't, it would have been fixed. They were trying to fix it, and then you had it
Electrical,
shipped to somebody else.
An electrical problem.
All right, so now do you have the paperwork from the new place in Tampa and
Yes.
what they did?
Yes, I do.
Okay, can I have that paperwork?
Yes. Those are all using factory parts as well.
Okay. Is there anything on this document that reflects that there was some kind of damage done in the prior repair?
Well, they had the bike. They're the ones who brought. I don't
I know,
understand your
you
question.
cannot possibly believe for 1 second that just because they have the bike when they bring up a problem to you, which is what happens at every dealership all the time and at any mechanic, that means they must pay for it. You have to have
Okay.
positive evidence that shows to me that it's more likely than not that they did something wrong. It's done every day in my courtroom. It's not rocket science.
Well, when I originally put the motorcycle in for repair electrically, I didn't say it had a transmission problem. I said it had an electrical problem. And when I left there, I
and
left there
then
in
they
pieces
diagnosed that
with electrical
your
problem.
problem was happening because of metal shavings, because of the transmission, because of the problem he explained. And it turns out he's probably right, because it's exactly what Harley-Davidson of Tampa did. They rebuilt your transmission. So what did they do wrong? And the answer is you have no evidence of wrongdoing on the part of Suffolk County Harley-Davidson, and I find in their favor. Good luck, folks.
Thank you.
So the judge finds for the defendant in this case, Mr. Beckman didn't work out too well for it. Beckman, sorry.
Yeah, well, what are you gonna do? It's not gonna change my lifestyle to $5,000, but what they did is wrong, and the dealership is no good, and I'll never use them again. And they're the ones who blew my tranny, and that's all I got to say.
Well, unfortunately, you couldn't convince the judge.
Obviously.
That's your problem there. You didn't have the right evidence you need. I'm sorry for you.
No, it's okay.
Okay, sorry about that. You must sign a few documents on your way out of the courtroom. Mr. Mooney, how are you? I imagine you're feeling better right now, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not always obvious to people who own the motorcycles what causes similar things, but we're an honest dealer. We're around 60 years. Customer service is key, and we just showed the facts as they were, and that's all.
The judge agreed with you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, congratulations. Thank you very much. Some doors that way, and that'll do it. Harvey?
Well, you know, the job of the repair shop is to do a professional job. That doesn't always mean that the vehicle is going to come out fine, because it may be that fixing one thing leads to another problem. And if the repair shop did a professional job, they're off the hook.